How do I advance to the C-suite? This is the start of our Ask Me Anything series that we are doing. And today we have a really, really juicy question. And it's this. One of the biggest challenges I have as a veteran engineer with 30 years of experience is how to move to the next level of technical leader. I find the advice and stories that most provide would require me to go back in time and join a fraternity at MIT or similarly impossible to replicate activity. I want to know how to present my subject matter expertise in a way that gains trust and make sure I am able to communicate effectively in meetings. I'll never get to the C-suite if the only way I can speak is by literally interrupting other people. And so this is such a good question, and I can only imagine how very frustrating this must be. You have 30 years of excellent work behind you. You have proven yourself multiple times over and over again, and yet you're still hitting this barrier. And it can be maddening to get advice that you're like, okay, I'm not a time traveler. I can't go back in time, join one of these fraternities that, frankly, 30 years ago wasn't even available to women. And so I want to point out to anyone watching this that you are not asking about basic advancement. You're asking about breaking into the executive ranks, which requires a bit different of a strategy than kind of your typical lower level advancement. And you are exactly right that traditional advice that you may be receiving, it doesn't really work when it comes to breaking into the C-suite. I also suspect that you have smashed up into this statistic firsthand, observing that there aren't many women in technical leadership roles where you work. So this statistic that you're seeing is according to a 2024 Women in the Workplace report by McKinsey and Company and leanin.org. They found that for every 100 men that are promoted to manager, only 81 women are. For a little context, in 2018, the number was 100 to 79. So we are making progress, but it is really, really slow. And the numbers are even worse when we look at women of color. And so I share this to help you understand that if you are struggling to advance, it is not just you. Now, I want to jump in to start answering this question. But because this question has a number of nuances and layers to it, I'm going to start at the top and address each piece, starting with this how to move to the next level of technical leader. Now, I'm going to keep our focus in this video just on this piece, and then I'm going to address the other topics within this question in separate videos. So there'll be 4 total to answer this question, just to keep what I'm sharing short, easily digestible, and immediately applicable, like you can do something with this immediately. Okay, so I want to give you some perspective before I actually start answering the question. Why? Because I think sometimes when people are saying, oh, well, how can you advance? If someone says, well, this is how I advanced, you don't necessarily know if their story is applicable to yours. And so for me, I am the founder of Engineers Rising LLC. Our mission is to normalize women leaders, and we have worked with everything from Fortune 500 and 100 companies to 20 people firms. We work with all genders, and we have an expertise in working with women emerging leaders and women-led teams and organizations. I am the author of She Engineers. We have done a bunch of research on women leaders. So for example, our She Leads STEM 100 Leaders project, I did case study interviews interviewing current women leaders, asking them how did they get into their roles? What advice do they have to bring up the next generation behind them? And those interviews included not only women leaders, but also male allies. I've also been on both sides of the leadership equation. So I founded my own firm. I am the current president, so of fiscal year 25 of the 30,000 member Structural Engineering Institute. I was elected. I had 4 years of board experience before this. And so, very, very large relatively bureaucratic organization that I am currently leading. I also have years as an employee in a small, medium-size engineering and architecture firm. So I worked in those types of firms for other people, had 3 kids while I was working for other people for 15 years before I founded my own firm. And so I share this with you to kind of give you the, we'll say, reality check that I am a guide, not a guru. So I'm not going to tell you, oh, this absolutely worked for me, do exactly as I say. What I am is a bit obsessed with figuring out how we normalize women leaders, how we have more women within leadership roles. I am also a champion pattern spotter. So I'm always looking for patterns. I literally just can't help it in terms of what is working right now for women leaders. And so think of me as your guide, not a guru. I'll also throw in a little bit of humor here. Like if your only mission in life is to get into the C-suite, go start your own company. But I know for you, the person asking this question, that's not what they're planning to do. If you're watching this video, maybe that's not what you're wanting to do. You're wanting to advance within your existing organization. So let me jump into sharing the patterns I have spotted. Okay, so the person asking this question has 30 years of experience. So I can safely assume that you have those technical skills. But to advance, this isn't all you need. And so what I want to introduce you to is the She Leads STEM Catalyst method, which is a model I created based on my interviews and that champion pattern spotting I just mentioned with women STEM leaders and allies, where one of the questions I asked was, how did you get into your current role? What were the pieces? Like, tell me that story. Now, 3 things came up over and over and over again, resulting in this useful 3-legged stool model, this analogy when it comes to advancement. And you can think of it this way. If you take out any one of these legs, you are going to struggle to advance. So let me explain each leg one by one. The 3 legs of this stool are competence, visibility, and trust. Okay, so let's start with competence. Competence means you are producing valuable outcomes and impact to the company. Now, note, I did not say competence means you are good at your job. You can be very, very good at your job and not get promoted if you are not providing something that has a tangible impact to your organization. And so what does that mean? Well, typically that means you need skills relative to technical, business, and I'm going to include strategic thinking over both of these. Technical skills is something that we as technical professionals are usually pretty good at developing. Maybe you have, even advanced credentials there. However, before we dive into the other legs, I want to point out one of the biggest challenges I see with developing competence when it comes to advancing to the very high level roles like the C-suite. And this is the business mentorship gap. When we start our careers, the advance that women in particular, and really anyone who has a non-traditional leadership style. So maybe your racial, ethnic, or gender identity puts you in a minority at work. Maybe you're disabled. Maybe you're coming from some kind of disadvantaged background. Any of us with those non-traditional leadership styles typically receive advice in early career about things like speaking up, being more confident, asking for what you want, professional branding, go get a mentor. And all of these things are true and useful. And they can even get us promoted into those first management roles. Now, sometimes if you are working for a smaller company, this can actually be enough to get you into middle management. But if you are working in a medium or large company, you are likely to get stuck at a project manager type role. Why? In part because this advice isn't enough to get you over the hump to that next level. Instead, what you really need is business acumen. And this is an area where I consistently see women in particular not getting any mentorship at all in this. unless they advocate for it. In other words, unless they ask for specifically this type of mentorship. And to be clear, this is not anecdotal or conjecture. When I give presentations into large organizations, this is one of the questions I ask routinely. I say, what topics are you getting mentored on? And I give them a list of topics. Sometimes we do it open-ended, but one of the things we find is that business acumen is nearly always last on the list of things that women are actually getting mentored on. And this is a hole that prevents you from getting to the C-suite if you are missing this piece of mentorship. So I want to make this tangible for you in terms of like things you can specifically ask to get mentored on. So examples of the types of business mentorship that will help you include information on things like company financials. That includes billable rates. What is your overhead if you're working, for example, in a consulting engineering firm? How business decisions get made in your company. And this specific one, it is really important for advancement, and it's often very specific to the company that you are working in. So how business decisions get made in one company who may have one type of client is likely to be different in how business decisions get made in another company. And I'll put this another way. If business decisions were made the same in every company, all those companies will be out of business because there's typically something about the business decisions that is different that leads to your company's unique value proposition, which is the reason that your company is in business. Other examples of things you can learn with business mentorship is how to build strategic relationships with board members, investors, clients, and customers. How to think like a business person, not just an excellent technical professional. And practice in communicating not just you, but your company's impact in business terms. All these things are essential to keep the doors open of a firm. And you can ask for this type of mentorship now that you know how important that it is. Okay, so that was the competence leg. Let's talk about the visibility leg. So the visibility leg means that the right people know about the impact you're making. Remember, competence means we are producing valuable outcomes and impact. And so visibility is like the next step of this, where we make sure the right people know about it. The main skill here is communication skills, including your ability to self-advocate. Now, there is a little bit of a confidence component in each of these. And for the visibility piece, the confidence component is asking for what you want, which can be especially hard if you identify as a woman, because we have been socially conditioned not to ask for what we want, especially if it comes to money or promotions or being ambitious. And this is one area that, because of the social conditioning, not just for you as an individual woman, but for many of us, like I've actually found sometimes men are socially conditioned not to be ambitious as well, depending on what their upbringing was. We've got to be direct in what we want to bust that social stereotype. Okay, and so if I put this in very like plain practical terms, what this means is that I have not seen beyond super small firms and a startup environment, women getting promoted without them being verbally explicit about what they want. And so what does that actually mean for you? Like, what can you do with this? Well, that means you got to ask for what you want. And so with this question being around, how do I get to that next level? I wanted to give you a sample script for your next career conversation that you could use in this situation. You could say something like, I am committed to growing within this organization and helping this company succeed. One of my career goals is to advance to the C-suite level, ideally within X timeframe, like share whatever timeframe you're comfortable with. In your opinion, what would I need to do to make that happen? Now, you can pose this question to people beyond your manager, but I strongly encourage you to have this conversation with your manager, assuming that you feel safe to do so. And I want you to note with the positioning of this question, I'm not asking permission. I'm not saying, do you think I'm ready for this role? Nope, we're not doing that, ladies. We are gaining intelligence about what would I need to do to make that happen. Okay, so we talked about the competence leg, the visibility leg. Let's talk about the trust leg. So the trust leg of this is essentially that people want to work with you and follow your lead. And the skill set you have to develop here is connection skills. Now, for me personally, this piece, this connection skill piece, has been a work in progress for me. It's the piece that I have to work the most intentionally on because it's not necessarily a skill that comes naturally to me as a fairly introverted person. And so if that is you, I want you to know you're not alone. This is something I and many other technical professionals have struggled with. And part of that connection skill is, again, this confidence component I keep on talking about in how you show up, especially if you're in a stressful situation, how you show up under pressure. Now, the good news here is I used to think connection skills, like how do you build trust with other people, was this like nebulous thing. Either you're born with it or you're not. And it turns out that this is no longer a mystery. We have a lot of science and data here around how you actually build trust. We actually have women-specific information on this as well. And so all you need to do to build trust, it's not hard. It just requires intention. And I'm going to record a whole separate video just on this topic so we can go through that and give you some very practical things that you can do, even if you are an introvert, even if you are not really a people person and you'd rather just do the technical work, which if you're like me, that's what you signed up for with your STEM career. Now, I want to emphasize that often what I see is that we as technical professionals over-index on the competence piece of this. Sometimes we have a little business acumen, often that's a hole within the competence piece, and then we under-index on the visibility and trust piece of this stool. And just like if you imagine 3 legs, if you chop out 2 legs of your 3-legged stool, your stool is going down. It's going to tip over. It's not going to be a solid foundation on which you can advance. And so if this is you, again, this is not hard. It just requires intention. And so right now, I'd asked you to consider, like, if you think of your stool, like, is your stool kind of knocked over on some of these legs? Is it a bit wobbly? Where do you think you should focus your efforts and energy? Now, the good news here is that we are going to take the rest of this question, which focuses. So today, I wanted to give you an overview on this 3-legged stool analogy in terms of how do you advance in terms of the big picture strategy. Remember, this all started with this really, really good question about how you get to the C-suite. So now that we have the overview on how to move to that next level of technical leader, we are going to be able to kind of dive deeper into the rest of this question with some more tactical things. And so I will answer that in future videos. I wanted to give you a preview of what you can expect, but more importantly, I want to share immediately a challenge with you. And so your challenge with this video is to share your ambition. We will talk in more detail, like I said, with the rest of that question in future videos. But the place to start is that you cannot share your ambition enough. I often find that we assume that other people know we want to advance. And sometimes that's not the case. Actually, often that's not the case. Often people don't pay as much attention to us as we think. And so we have to be the CEOs of our own careers and make sure our managers know we want to advance. Our mentors in the company know we want to advance. Know that we are looking for that business mentorship I was talking about a few moments ago and how we can use our strengths to better contribute to our company. And so what I want you to do is share your ambition with your manager in your next career conversation. Maybe you have a one-on-one coming up here this week or in the next couple of days. If you don't feel safe to do that with your manager, there's absolutely some situations where the work environment is such as that you may not feel safe to do that. Start with a good friend. I want you to share it out loud and own the fact that you are an ambitious person. Again, especially if you are a woman, we are conditioned to tamp down our ambitions so that we don't make other people feel small. And I want to give you permission to own that ambition. Own that, hey, I want to be the boss. I want to be in charge. I want to be in the C-suite. And so I would love it if you would drop me a comment below this video, even just writing it here. Say, what do you want to own? What is your ambition? Share it with me. And then, of course, if you have any questions, let me know, and I will elaborate on those in the future of this series. Okay, so what's coming next here? So the next 3 videos are going to stay focused on this precise question. You have the overview of it. The next video, we're going to talk about how to present your subject matter expertise in a way that gains trust. So 100% focus on that trust leg of that 3-legged stool I just shared. The next one after that is how to communicate effectively in meetings. And then the 4th video gets its own topic, how to deal with interruptions. Oh my goodness, if I had $1 for every time someone said, how do I deal with people interrupting me? How do I get a word in edgewise when I'm trying to share my expertise in meetings? I would be very, very, very wealthy. And so that deserves its own video there. Okay, so thank you for watching. Let me know if you have any questions about this and we'll address them in future videos. And don't forget your homework. Let me know, what ambition are you owning?